Alright, so in this video we want to have a look at a slide made by an investment bank from the perspective of a management consultant. The context for doing this is that both professions have to communicate with very senior clients through the user presentations. And so we want to have a look and see what's different between how investment bankers do it and how management consultants do it. The other thing that's common is that both professions also have extremely highly paid personnel. And so presumably you'd expect that a standard would be very similar between the two, because there's only probably not that many ways how you can make really good presentations and really good corporate communication. And so we just want to test that theory and see if that is true or not. So by way of background, the lens through which we're going to be looking at these slides is from a management consultant or former management consultant with just about a decade of experience in the field, that has progressed through the ranks, starting as a business analyst and then worked on as an associate or senior consultant and then as a project manager and then as a principal. And so we've done a bit of Googling and we found this presentation which was produced by an investment bank called Goldman Sachs. It's quite a recent document. It was produced on January 16th, 2024. And it talks about the results of the bank for the full year and fourth quarter ended in 2023. So if you skip through, you see that it's quite a long presentation, many pages, and a bit of a mix of what the pages look like. Some are very visual, like this one, or this one, or this one. And then later on in the document, you can see that some of the pages start to look a little bit more dense, have a lot of different charts, a lot of different sections, a lot of different numbers and text. And that kind of becomes the back half of the presentation. And so that style with high density of information seems to run through until the end. And then you have the footnotes and other legal notes that they include. So just looking at this at a high level, I think it looks like there's basically two halves of the presentation. One half is the sort of like executive summary type or executive communication style slides with that are well designed. They look quite elegant and just visually appealing, and then the other half is a bit more of what I think of when I think about investment banking or finance slides. And so maybe to make this a bit more interesting, let's actually pick one of the slides from the second half, and so the one I like is slide number 15, which is this one. And you can see that the way it's structured is that it's got 4 different sections. Top left, we have a table with 5 columns. Bottom left, we have another table with 3 columns. Top right, we have some text with bullet points in 2 levels of hierarchy. And then bottom right, we have 4 pie charts that show percentages. So this is a slide, like I said, it looks quite a bit different to the slides in the first half of the presentation. And to me, this is a more typical slide produced by investment bankers or produced by non-consultants to be maybe a bit more precise. So what do we notice on this slide? It looks different, right? It looks much more dense. To my eye, it also looks much less elegant. To be honest, I don't think a slide like this would actually fly in a consulting situation. We couldn't really produce a slide like this and put it in front of our clients, I don't think, or put it in front of partners inside a consulting company for internal reviews or internal discussions. I don't think the slide would be perceived very well, and I think as a consultant, if you produce this kind of slide, you would have been asked to go back and revisualize it and make it better. So what's wrong with this slide? Let's have a look together. Well, the first thing is just it's a little bit unclear what it tries to tell you. There's just a bit of information overload. There's all kinds of different ways in which information is presented. It's pretty much everything that you can come up with, maybe except for like a framework or an illustration. But it's got tables, it's got text, it's got charts. Good thing it's got only one type of chart, which is the pie chart, but it's got it 4 times. So yeah, very confusing. It's also unclear what the main message is. Normally what we try to have on our slides is that the title of the slide would need to be an action title, which means that there's some sort of verb in the title that describes something that's happened. In this case, it just says asset and wealth management, assets under supervision. So it's like a descriptive title, but it doesn't really tell you what's happened. It just tells you what's on the slide. which you can probably work out by yourself if you are familiar with the bank or with the structure of the document and what this section is going to be about. So it describes that, but it doesn't really tell you what's so important about this slide or what's actually happened that you need to care about. The other thing that jumps to eye is that it looks like there's just a lot of numbers as well, especially if you look at the top left table. You can see that there's a lot of numbers, and some numbers are big. So this is in billions of dollars. So you can see that some numbers are big, so they're like 2.68 trillion or 2.714 trillion. But then some numbers are very small, like 51 billion, or comparatively small compared to those trillions. Some numbers are even zero, like in the line that's called acquisitions/dispositions. So there's a lot of what you would kind of call immaterial information or non-material information that is, yes, useful to know what's happened, but it takes up valuable real estate on the page. And because it's non-material, it doesn't really matter that much. But for some reason, it's still on the slide, right? And so there's just, that contributes to information overload and creating a lot of complexity, but not really explaining what's happening. And so making it more confusing for the reader to interpret and understand the slide, unless they're already familiar with this template. But as someone who is not, I think this can definitely be an improvement area, is just make it less complex, take out information that doesn't matter, or present it in a different way where that just focuses on the big numbers, the important bits, and kind of removes all the rest of it somewhere else, like in the footnotes, for example. The next thing is that there seems to be a bit of duplication of information as well, because the table at the bottom left presents to you assets under supervision split into different types of assets. So for example, there's the alternative investments, there's equity, there's fixed income, and then there's liquidity products, and then there's the totals. And that information is presented for the fourth quarter of 23, the third quarter of 23, and the fourth quarter of 22. And so that similar information is then presented on the right-hand side in one of the pie charts. So it's the pie chart in the top left among all the other pie charts. And you can see that it says it's a breakdown by asset class, which is the same as the table on the bottom left. And so it says that fixed income is 40%, liquidity products is 26%, equities 23%, and then alternative investments is 11%. And if you run the numbers in the table in the bottom left, you can see that that's basically the same information that is presented there, but not in percentage form, but in absolute terms. And so yes, it's more visual on the right-hand side. It takes you less time to understand what's going on the right-hand side. When you look at the pie chart, it takes you longer to understand what's going on if you look at the table on the left-hand side. But why would you waste valuable real estate and valuable attention of the reader by presenting the same information twice? So we would have probably decided to pick one that's the better way to represent that information and get rid of the other and save some real estate and make the page less dense and less complex. The other thing that kind of jumps to mind is that it's also just unclear how you're supposed to read the slide, whether you're supposed to go top left, top right, bottom right, or if you're supposed to go left to right, so top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, or some other way. It's just very unclear what is the hierarchy of information here. Which bits of it do you read first? Which bits do you read second, third, fourth? There are also just no markings on the slide that could highlight which bits of it are actually important. Like, for example, sometimes when you have a lot of information on a slide like this, and you want to direct the reader to something very specific, you would probably put like a red box around that column or around that part of the chart, around a piece of text that is really critical, and you want that if the readers understand anything at all on this page, that would be the part of it that you'd want them to understand. There's none of that on this page, obviously. Everything seems to be of equal importance, and then some like we said, some numbers are really big, some numbers are really small, so it's just, yeah, it's a little bit confusing. Then when we have a look at the text at the bottom right-hand corner, it's just a lot of text. There's no bolding, no underlining, no way to really tell what is the key message here. It just says that maybe the top two bullet points that have a little square next to them, maybe they're the main messages. So the first one says, during the year, AUS increased by 265 billion to a record of 2.81 trillion. Okay, that seems like a pretty important message. And then the second bullet point just says, during the quarter, AUS increased by 132 billion. So I think that first one is a little bit more intuitive. Okay, hit a record of 2.81 trillion. That seems like an important piece of information. That second bullet point talks about the 132 billion. That one is a bit unclear. Why does that matter? What does it actually try to tell you? And then the sub bullet points, ones that have a line next to them or dash next to them, they just seem to describe all the non-material movements that are presented in the top left-hand side table, which is called AOS roll forward. So roll forward just means what are all the changes that happen between start of a period and the end of a period. And so the text on the right-hand side just really then describes that there have been all these net inflows and market appreciations and dispositions, which you can already see on the left-hand side. And so to me, the sub-bullet points with dashes next to them don't add any new information to the page, but they add a lot of text and they add a lot of time you need to spend reading this page and trying to understand how everything's related to everything else, but doesn't really add new information. It just says dispositions related to the sale of PFM. Okay. Yep, great. So just in summary, I think a lot of information. The other thing that is a little bit confusing is if you look at the pie charts in the bottom right hand side, you can see that they all use the same set of colors. So there's a dark blue, there's a purple, there's a light blue, and then there's some sort of green, light green. And that same color palette is used on each of the 4 pie charts. And then you have 4 different sets of legends to describe what those color codes mean for each of the pie charts. And those legends, of course, then also use the same set of colors. And so it's just very confusing. Like if you look at the dark blue in the first chart, it means fixed income. In the second chart, it means institutional. In the third chart, it means Americas. And in the fourth chart, it means separate accounts. And so normally what we try to do is stick or keep colors reserved for one thing. But of course, then it'd be kind of hard to do. You'd just have many different types of colors on this page if you try to do that, to look even less elegant and just more overloaded with different information codes. So I can see why they will have chosen to just keep it to the 3 or 4 different colors. But nevertheless, it's just, I think it's better than what it could have been, but it's not the most elegant way to present information. So in summary, lots of information, unclear how to read the page, unclear as to what's the actual information hierarchy on here, duplication, and then some information just seems meaningless because it's already described somewhere else, and the text descriptions don't really add anything on top of what you can see in the tables already. Anyhow, so thanks for watching this. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and then also don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.